Here we go, world flutes. What should we make this video about? Let's make it about world flutes. When? Why? And which? Which flutes to choose, perhaps? Maybe if you're going to begin to wander and expand on having practiced, learnt. I'm not going to say mastered because none of us do that, I believe, with any flute, really. There's always other avenues to explore, other sounds to explore within the same instrument. And I know sometimes when I view things online myself, I think I've got somewhere with maybe Native American style flute. I'll use that one because I'm most familiar with it. And then I view somebody else's playing and it's completely different to my own style. Brilliant, good. We all like to be unique at least a little bit. But they're phenomenal, so phenomenal. It's just like, oh my goodness, I know nothing. And, you know, sometimes I look forward, but I don't want to wish my life away either. I do look forward to having maybe 15, 20 years experience on flute. And in actual fact, some of my bigger plans actually include having gained that experience and what I'll do with that experience at that point. But for the moment, I am on a journey myself to discover and practice and fall in love with other world flutes in the same capacity and in the same, with the same love and the same amount of endearment and passion as I have discovered with Native American flute. And the first one that I tried, actually, here's a really worthwhile story. To the when, speaking into the when to do this. I mean, essentially, whenever you want, of course. But for me, this is how it unfolded. I bought a didgeridoo about 3 years ago. And the practice of that, bearing in mind I'd only really been playing flute 1 or 2 years before that, the practice of the didgeridoo was quite commanding. You really did have to practice it every day. And what else was I trying to do at the time? I was trying to develop my own flute playing. And so my flute playing was becoming less and less as I was mastering circular breathing. And actually it's when I first started to develop. Well, actually that's not far from the truth, but grow, or allow to grow and look a little bit more rugged and keep some of my facial hair for the first time. And it didn't help sealing it around the didge. So actually I found, because of the back pressure, unlike circular breathing on flutes, you get quite a lot of back pressure from a didge in comparison. And relatively speaking, I would say it's much easier to therefore achieve circular breathing on the didgeridoo than it is with flute, because there's really not a lot of back pressure going on with flute. And when you are on the outward motion of circular breathing, so you're taking that breath in through your nose and you've stopped your airway around about here or wherever is comfortable for you without going too deeply into it, and you're pushing that air out, that's a lot more forgivable on what kind of sound that will make and how that plays into the picture, the variances and the nuances of the sound of the didgeridoo. In comparison to flute, you need much more control to be able to deliver that stacked up air in your system through the flute without wavering and giving a huge influx of breath. Needless to say, when I was trying to figure all of this out, that actually I hadn't really progressed enough with Native American flute to really be able to come back to it without having lost some of what I'd gained. So I recognized with that actually practicing the didge was taking away from me progressing with the flute. And so I took the decision at the time, and I think I was a bit strapped for cash as well. I thought, well, it's just sitting there, it's very pretty, all that sort of jazz. And I'd ordered turned out to be quite an expensive flute from somewhere as well. And I just saw that the didgeridoo, it was time to part company with it, to actually commit myself to flute. And then sold the didge, which helped pay for the flute, and happy days. Didn't look back until more recently, where now I'm like 3, 4, 5 years down the line with flute. I can afford to pick up instruments and give 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes practice on new world flutes, for example. And even if I don't play Native American flute for 3, 4, 5 days, I can pretty much pick up where I left off. What also plays into that actually is that I'm making a lot of flutes as well. So I'm making, 1, maybe 2 in a week max. Sometimes just 1, sometimes one takes 2 weeks if it's a drone flute or something like that. So, but I'm playing because I'm demonstrating what I've made, and I'm keeping that ball rolling, and in order to keep my social medias up to speed, and just show people what I've been creating. Then I'm always jumping back in, and I'm familiarizing myself with many different flutes because they all play slightly differently as well, and navigating that. And that has also helped kick on my playing to a certain degree, or at least keep my hand into playing whilst I have fun with other things. So this is the first one, closest to our shores, world flutes. It's actually a tin whistle. It's a low D tin whistle. So why would we pick up a low D tin whistle? Well, for me, out of all of the whistles, I'm not so much into, again, this is a very personal thing, so don't be upset about anything that I might say. We're all on our personal journey when it comes to what resonates, what doesn't resonate, everything like that as well. So what I find is I'm not really into, I appreciate 100%, I appreciate the skill set of the smaller tin whistles and how rapid people are playing them, and with their piper's grip, and they're up and down, and it's incredibly skillful when you consider you're playing on 2 octaves. So it's really, really vital. I mean, to perfect the breath pressure into playing in both of those octaves, and you get it wrong, you slip into the wrong octave, and blah, 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 blah. But also just the dexterity in which they play as well is just a sight to behold, and how they ever even remember what they're playing, I don't know. And that's one of the things I struggle with. But actually the sound, so as much as I'm impressed by the playing, the technique, the skill, which is undeniable, the sound just really isn't my thing. It's very Irish folky type thing, What I do love though is the low D whistle. So think of Lord of the Rings, Vikings, loads of these kind of theme musics, the theme music for many sort of atmospheric, mystical, magical films are recorded on the low D whistle. So I've got a little bit of a demo that I've recorded prior to recording this particular video, so it's got a little bit of reverb on there, which we'll play in just a second. But the skill of this is very, very different to Native American flute. We know is minor pentatonic, 5 notes traditionally. I'm going to cover 6-hole Native American flutes in another video, so I won't dive down that rabbit hole just yet. I do not gel with the major scale on Irish whistle or Irish flute very well. It's much more melodic, Western sound. Just the scale is in full steps. So where it plays into melody and like written music and sheet music, and that's what I kind of use it for. For me personally, again, this is a personal thing, I just don't gel with that from a improvised flute playing perspective. But I do absolutely adore the sound of some of these film theme tunes and that kind of magical world. It's mesmerizing. It's just so beautiful. But it's not something that I seem to be able to, at least yet, be able to wrap my head around to come up with my improvised versions of things. Now, somebody said to me the other day, actually, using the sheet music and tabs like this that you can find online to play along with, that helps teach you the skill, and just if you can pick up one or two different songs, then that will help you grasp, I guess, how the flute works and where you can go and what you can do with it. And I'm finding that is true, but I'm still a novice, an absolute novice on Irish tin whistle. It's taught me a lot about breath control. You have to amp up the ante of your breath control because we're playing on 2 octaves. The brilliance of that is that you get to express yourself further than just the one scale will provide you on, say, Native American flute, just for an example. But the downside is also, if you get that wrong, then you slip into the wrong octave and it just, the bottom falls out of whatever you're playing, really. So it's more creative in some ways, and in some other ways it's actually more restrictive. And I would say that probably not a lot of people would say that, but I would say that because you're able on Native American flute to give it a lot of beans on certain notes, and particular depending on what kind of flute and how it's made and how the air is flowing through it. Particularly branch flutes, we know, are a little bit more quirky, can be quite quirky. So depending on what the strongest notes are, and this is true of machine-made flutes as well, depending on what are the strongest notes on that particular flute, you can give it some real beans and you're not worried about it jumping into another octave accidentally, so you can really explore the edges of that. It's also true on here, but when you drop your breath a little bit too much, you're like, oh, just gone down into the wrong octave. Or sometimes I get a little bit excited on the low notes and I really want to give it beans, and it's just straight up into the next octave, you see. So it's helpful because it helps teach us more about breath control. They're really great prices. I'm going to put a link in actually into this video. There's somewhere to go online if you're interested in either purchasing these, not this particular one, anyone, but also getting useful flute tabs like this and playing along yourself. Then I can thoroughly recommend the channel of Cutie Pie. That's where if I ever come across some Irish flute music that I would love to play, that's my first port of call to see whether she's created flute tabs for it. She's very, very generous. It's got a lot of free content on there of how to play this. Sorry, just had a low battery warning there. So without further ado, here is the little bit of Irish music. And yeah, I'm going to come back after I've charged my phone and we'll talk a little bit more about Kaval. Or will we? Maybe there's another video in there. Maybe I could just save it for another week. I don't know. We'll see how we go. So welcome back. There you go. There was a little demo of where I currently am with the Irish tin whistle. It's not great. It's pretty much all I play. I do occasionally try improv. And actually I got quite nervous recording that because sometimes I misplaced the fingers and wanted to get to the end of the song without messing up too much, which I just about did, but actually I didn't deliver that much expression through there, which I would normally do, and I normally do when I'm practicing. But here, for the purposes of the demonstration, it was fine. I'm not gonna do Kaval. I'm moving next week or just after next week. There's another battery warning. So I'm gonna save the Kaval until then, because it's gonna be a bit of a mission for me to upload. So you can look forward to having Moldavian Kaval next week. We're going to stick with Irish flute. There are a few more things that I would like to chat about when it comes to Irish flute, particularly the low D whistle. Let's say I wanted to play this just with fingertips like I would normally with Native American flute. I can barely reach. See, first, I couldn't even get that right. I can't cover the holes properly. And that's always a real reach for that to place that back down. And so what we do to get over that issue is we place, this is how to do piper's grip on any flute, but in this case Irish whistle. We place our lowest finger on there. You can see the gap there is quite huge. I don't have huge hands, but yeah, I would imagine for others of you it's even more of a stretch, so you would have to then place. This is good for Native American flute as well if you're struggling to reach. So you put your thumb pad, your finger pad on the bottom note, and rather than trying to pull back and stretch to these, just allow your fingers to fall gracefully over the other two holes. It takes a little bit of time to learn. What does that do for our playing? Well, actually it softens the notes. So if you're playing with your finger pads, there's a definite duh, 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 duh when you hit the note. If you're playing piper's grip, then you can lift. It's almost sliding a note. And when you master that, which I haven't, particularly whilst I'm playing, you're bringing that into your playing. Watch some other people's videos of how they do it. They're absolutely brilliant. But you can use that technique on Native American style flute as well. And what it just allows you to flutter more gently as well. It's just harder when you're using your finger pad. So particularly with fluttering on Native American flute, it's me playing with the breath pressure, breath pressure, and playing with the octaves. So if I was to try and play something a little bit like improv, yeah, it is a beautiful sound and it's something I'll persevere with for sure. It helps. What else has it helped me with? And this is important because it all comes back, for the purposes of my videos, it all comes back to Native American flute. So you might want to explore different sounds and learn new instruments, and it's beautiful to add these to our repertoire. It broadens our horizons, it broadens our creativity as well. You may find different tunes in there. You may go back to the Native American flute and be able to bring in some of the kind of styles and sounds or different types of melody, particularly with the 6-hole flute. Native American, it's a more modern version. You can bring that half note into play a little bit and perhaps, you know, get somewhere closer to the major scale here. But I want to take you, just before we go through the cross fingering that will also play into the 6th hole on the Native American flute, which again I'll cover in another video. The cross fingering here is not cross fingering, but it's going from one end of the scale to the other. You get up to this final note, and then you place all of these fingers back down, but keep the top one open. And you blow harder, which I didn't do initially, so it's a good demo. You blow harder to get into the 2nd octave. So what happens if you don't blow hard enough whilst you're in the 2nd octave? It jumps straight back down into the 2nd. Similarly, as you're in the lower octave and if you blow too hard, which, I mean, this is a loud flute anyway, so you don't really need to blow too hard. But if you do, before you know it, you're up there again. There you go. Didn't intentionally do that. So it's great. It teaches you a lot whenever you pick up any different type of flute. So I hope you've enjoyed that slightly different video and introduction to Irish tin whistle. It's part of my journey now. I'm looking for other pieces of music. The Dear Irish Boy. This is the first one that really struck me. I saw somebody else perform it way better than I do. Anne Buchanan Band, The Dear Irish Boy is what that music was that I played earlier on. I might just put a link in, not comments, what talking about, it's not Facebook, is it, or Instagram. I'll put another link in below, as well as Cutie Pie, which is worth checking out for everything Irish tin whistle. I'll put the rendition of the inspiration for Irish flute down there in whatever it's called as well, in the info. There you go. I hope you've enjoyed something slightly different today. Next week then we're going to play and we're going to look into something like the Kaval. Now, what I will say about both of these options and why do I find myself doing these just before I go is they're Fipple flutes. The hard work of creating the correct embouchure, as like side blown flutes or end blown flutes, you know, it's all about the angle. Think shakuhachi, Turkish ney, they're all just blown into just an open circle at the top, and you have to create the embouchure to, you know, all of that work has been done for you. It's been done for you on Native American style flute. It's been done for you on Irish tin whistles, and it's also been done for you on the Kaval. You actually blow into the bottom of the Kaval through there, and it's the Fipple is underneath, therefore the finger holes on top. So that's where they're a fairly easy transition, but there again, you know, it's teaching yourself a little bit more about breath control, and it just helps develop us whenever we go in any other direction, so long as you are far enough down the road where you feel, oh, you know, I'm ready to expand on this Native American flute. That's different for all of us. Sending you all lots of love, and I'll speak to you next week.